Okay, so first thing you do is set your equation equal to 0. Then you factor the left side, set each factor equal to 0, solve for x, and then like write it in braces, like the curly parentheses. So this is just going back to our factoring. So we have an equation. Now let's practice factoring. So if you remember factoring, then you should be good for today. So instead of y equals, we want to set it equal to 0. And then we ignore the right side completely. And so we'll do our box method. So I'm going to do this up here too, so you remember. Remember, ax squared goes in your first box, c goes in your last. 1 multiplies to a times c and adds to b. So in this situation, a is 1, b is 3, c is negative 10. So a times c would just be 1 times negative 10. So we need to know what are 2 numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. Or 2 numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. So you list all your factors of 10. 1 and 10, 2 and 5. And if you don't know, good thing to practice anyway. If you don't know, you take 10. I'm going to start with 1. Divided by 1 is 10. So that's how we got 1 and 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 2 and 5. 10 divided by 3 gives you a decimal, so it's not possible. 3 is not a factor. 10 divided by 4 gives you a decimal. The next number you would try would be 5. So this is your whole list of factors. So we can either choose 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. 2 and 5. So 2 times 5 gives me a positive 10. We want it to be a negative 10 and add to a positive number. So which 2 or 5 has to be negative to add to a positive 3? Which one's bigger? 2 or 5? 5. So the 5 has to be positive. So 2 is negative. Is that what you said? Oh, sorry. Yes. So again, negative 2 plus 5, or 5 minus 2 is 3. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. So negative 2 and 5. We're putting x squared in the middle, in the top left. Negative 10 on the side. And it doesn't matter where you put negative 2 or where you put 5. Anybody write down yet? What'd you put here? Negative 2. Okay. And just make sure you put an x with it. Negative 2x, 5x. Then we need to know what's in common. X squared and 5x. What's in common? X. So we take out an x. X squared, or x times what gives you x squared? 1, yes, x times x is x squared. X times what gives you 5x? Right, so 5 times x is 5x. 1x times what gives you negative 2x? So we already have the x. 1 times what gives you negative 2? Negative 2. And then just to check, negative 2 times 5 gives you negative 10. So when you factor, the outsides are your answers. So here are your answers. X minus 2, 1x plus 5. Remember, it's a positive 5, so you have to put a plus 5 in there. But we're not done now, because we still have to solve. We're trying to get 2 answers. All right, I want to teach you a little bit of a shortcut on these. Now that we know how to do this, we've been doing this a lot, and we're doing more to this question. I was just going to do it quicker if possible. So if A equals 1, you can just use these 2 numbers. X minus 2, x plus 5. So if A equals 1, you can skip this chart and just do x minus 2, x plus 5. If A equals something other than 1, you can't do that though. All right, so after you factor the left side, set each factor equal to 0. Set each factor equal to 0. So I'm going to set x minus 2 equal to 0. That's one factor. And x plus 5 equal to 0. And then just solve both of them. Add over here 2. X equals 2. Subtract over here 5. X equals negative 5. In Delta Math, it'll have you use those braces, like you'll do the little plus sign. So it'll be 2 comma negative 5. That's the same thing as x equals 2 and x equals negative 5.
We have to do x equals.
Not if it's just for me, but I was just showing you that's how Delta Math will have you put your answer in.
If we get it wrong in the quiz, but we did get the answer right, we just do what x equals the wrong answer. We still do it.
I'll go back and look at it. Yeah, I'll go back and look at it. Absolutely. All right. Three more with me. Then I'll let you guys practice on your own, since you should know how to factor. The hard part is just setting equal to 0. This one's just remembering how to factor. A equals B equals C equals. A is always the number in front of x squared. 1. B is the number in front of x. 11. And C is your last number. 24.
And then
X equals 1? What if x equals 1? Then x equals 1? I don't get that question. So we want to know what multiplies to AC. So A times C is 1 times 24, which is 24. And we want to know what adds to B, which is 11. So two numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 11. And get your calculator. 24 divided by 2, 12, 3, 8, 4, 6. 5 doesn't go into it because it doesn't end in 5 and 0. And 6 is my next number. So it has to be one of these 4 numbers or sets of numbers. Because all of them multiply to 24, but which add to 11? 8 and 3. 8, 9, 10, 11. 8 and 3. Okay, A equals 1, so I'm going to skip our box and just go to our answers, our factored answer. X, it's a positive 3, and X, positive 8. And just to show you it worked, x squared, 24, 3x, 8x. We'll add an x here, an x here, 3 here, and 8 here. So 3 times 8 is 24. So x plus 3, x plus 8. That only works if A is 1, though. And that's when people always miss it, because they're like, oh, they always just jump to this answer. And if A is like 2, then there should be like a 2 here. They're going to miss that. So this always works. Jumping straight here doesn't always work. Set both equal to 0 and solve. No? I said we'll do 3 of them. -3, -8. X squared plus 15x equals 0. So it's already set equal to 0, unlike our next one. But there's not 3 terms, like there's not an A, B, and C. So just to make it look a little less confusing, we're trying to factor 3x squared plus 15x. So we don't factor using the x, what multiplies to A and C as to B. We use greatest common factor on this one. Because there's only 2 terms, and it's not difference of squares, which we'll review next question. So 3x squared plus 15x, what is our greatest common factor between 3 and 15? 3. And you're right. I'm just showing it out real quick. So our greatest common factor is 3. And then how many x's do they have in common? 1. So that's what we're going to take out. So Our greatest common factor is 3x. So we're going to factor that out. So when we factor that out, you're dividing. What's 3x squared divided by 3x? So it's 3 divided by 3. Three divided by 3 gives me 1. Yep, and x squared divided by x. So I had 2 x's on top. I'm dividing 1 out. I have 1 left over. Keep the sign positive. 15 divided by 3? 5. And I had 1 x, and I took an x out. So no x. When you take out the greatest common factor, you put that in front, 3x in front. Equals 0. And that's completely factored. And then you just set both factors equal to 0 and solve. So 3x equals 0. Solve that one. 1x plus 5 equals 0 and solve that one. How do we solve 3x equals 0? So you're going to do this on your own in a second. But remember, if the 3 is right next to the x, that's multiplying. So to get rid of multiplication, you divide. X equals 0 divided by 3 is 0. Trying to get x alone. Subtract over the 5. So 1x equals negative 5. And 1x is the same thing as x. So x equals negative 5.
So,
What do you mean? I want to always be a part. They've all been 2 so far, haven't they? This one was 2. 2 and 2. Yeah. Quadratics, remember from Friday, quadratics is the solutions are when they cross the x-axis. So you can have 2, you can have 1. You actually have none, but with factoring, I won't give you any of those. But you have 0. So you can have 2 solutions, 1 solution, or 0 solutions. No solution. Just so you know. All right. Now, we get to one where it's not equal to 0. And that's what we're going to get to today. We're working some that aren't equal to 0. And so you're going to have to set it equal to 0. So when you set it equal to 0, you want to get everything on this side with x squared. Usually we'll just do it to the left. So I move everything to the left. So anytime you go over your equal sign, you have to subtract it over. You do the opposite. If it's a positive 64, I'm going to subtract 64. If it was a negative 64, then I add 64. And remember, you can only add like terms. You can only add like terms. So x squared and 64 aren't like terms because this doesn't have an x squared. So it'll just be x squared minus 64. So that's what we're trying to find. Factor, x squared minus 64. All right, we'll just get back in good habits. Is there a greatest common factor between 1 and 64? 1. So if there's a greatest common factor of 1, you don't have to take that out because they'll stay the exact same. So A equals 1, B equals, what does B equal? B equals 0. Remember, B is the number with x, and there isn't one. So B equals 0, and C equals negative 64. A equals 1, so we can jump straight to the x. It multiplies to A times C, 1 times negative 64, and adds to 0. One and 64. 2 and 32. 3 and a decimal, no. 64 divided by 4. 4 and 16. Doesn't end in a 5, so it can't be 5. 6, no, because it's not divisible by 3. 7, decimal. 8, 8 and 8. So all of these multiply to 64. 1 times 64 is 64. 2 times 32 is 64. 4 times 16 is 64. 8 times 8 is 64. But which ones add to 0 or have a difference of 0? 8 and 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. 8 minus 8. So 8 minus 8 is negative 64. So since A equals 1, we could skip the box and do x plus 8, x minus 8 equals 0. No. Then we set both equal to 0 and solve. So worked out. Yes. So x equals negative 8. X equals positive 8. All right, one last question, because if I don't do it, you're going to have trouble with today's notes. I try to give you as little notes as possible, because you practice it on your own. We'll do this one, because it looks scary. Last one. All right, we have to set this equal to 0. So we're gonna move everything to the left side, set equal to 0. And you can only add or subtract like terms. So if we're getting rid of 4x, we have to subtract over 4x to both sides of your equal sign. And then you want to line negative minus 4x underneath the one with just the x. So minus 4x. And then some students are good at doing this in one equation, but you can do it in 2, because then the next step will be we have to move the 1 over 2. So we're minus over 1, and you're going to put that under 49. Those are like terms because they don't have variables together. So the right side's easy because 4x minus 4x go away. 1 minus 1 gives you 0. So we're left with 0 on that side. Which is the whole purpose of our question. The whole purpose of this step is to get our right side to equal 0. Then you just do the math and we're back to a normal equation. Negative 10x minus 4x is negative 14x. You can put a calculator if you want. It's negative 14. 49 minus 1 is 48. Plus 48. Want to finish the notes? All right, when I finish the notes, I'll come talk to you. So when I finish the notes, I'll come talk to you. So A is 1, B is negative 14, and C is 48. So we're back. Since A is 1, we can skip the reverse box and multiply it. It's what A times C is and adds to B. So 1 times C is 48, adds to negative 14. Things that multiply to 48, 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, 6 and 8, 7 is a decimal. The next number I try would be 8. With one of these pairs. And multiply to 48, but add to negative 14. So which one has a difference of 14? Or sum of 14? This adds up to 49. This adds up to 26. This adds up to 19. This adds up to 16. That adds up to 14. So 6 and 8. But remember, to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, they both have to be negative. They both have to be negative. So -6 and -8 add to a -14, but multiply to a positive. Since a is 1, you can skip the box and just do x minus 6, x minus 8 equals 0. So hopefully that will save you a little bit of time today with our 8 questions. But if you don't skip the box, it still works. X is what's in common. Here, -8, -6. All right, your last step is set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Add over your 6. 0 plus 6 is 6. Add over your 8. 0 plus 8 is 8. And that's the hardest it's going to get today. Tomorrow we're going to add an a is bigger than 1. So we'll actually have to do the box method. All right. So let's work on some of your questions instead of just doing some examples so that we can get some of our notes done. All right, so someone pull up their computer and I'll work on with you. Hey Adrian, how are you? You have one you're working on? Let me see your problem. Okay. All right, Adrian, I see this one for you. Right? Oh, I had to end today's video. Oops.